Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem Hey, Daf 45 of Masechta Pesachim. So at the beginning, we're really wrapping up our discussion of Tam Ki'ikr and Heter mitztaref le'Isser, the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. So we're going to kind of cap that off and then get into, let's say, being mevatel dough. How exactly can you be mevatel dough, and what that looks like. So that's today's daf, and let's get started over here. So we are on daf Mem Dalet Amud Beis, about 6 lines from the bottom. Very beautiful. So from the rabbis we should learn to Rabbi Akiva, meaning, so the rabbis had said, well, how about this? Why don't you guys tell me? What did the rabbis say? So the rabbis said that by Nazir, we learn out Tam Ki'ikr, that if you take some grapes and you put them in some water, and then you take the grapes out of the water, and now the water has a grape taste to it, so nonetheless, the Nazir will be unable to drink the water because of Tam Ki'ikr, that the fact that the flavor is there, the flavor of the grapes are in the water, so it's as if the grapes are in the water and the Nazir cannot eat it. And then here's the important part for now, which is that the Chachamim then apply that globally. That just like Tam Ki'ikr is by Nazir, so it's by everywhere. So now this is as opposed to Rabbi Akiva, or really Rabbi Yochanan, who we said was saying like Rabbi Akiva, who said at the end of Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis that B'chol Yisurin Shabbatorah Ein Heter mitztaref le'Isser, with the exception being Nazir, that by Nazir Heter is mitztaref le'Isser, that if you have some, less than a kazayas of wine, and then you take some bread and you soak it in that wine, and now with the bread and the wine you have a kazayas, so then Heter is mitztaref le'Isser. So now here's the kasha right now. The kasha is, how come the Rabbanan say we learn out Tam Ki'ikr from Nazir and therefore we apply it globally, this concept of Tam Ki'ikr, and yet Rabbi Akiva learns out Heter mitztaref le'Isser from Nazir and he does not apply it globally. We have Rabbi Yochanan, who holds like Rabbi Akiva, who's saying that the only place in the Torah where we say Heter is mitztaref le'Isser, I hope I didn't say Tam Ki'ikr according to Rabbi Akiva, we learn out Heter mitztaref le'Isser from Nazir, and that's the only place where we say Heter is mitztaref le'Isser. We do not apply it globally. So the question is, how come the Chachamim apply Tam Ki'ikr globally from Nazir, and Rabbi Akiva is unwilling to apply Heter mitztaref le'Isser globally from Nazir? So, so from the rabbis, we should learn to Rabbi Akiva, meaning Milo Amir Rabbanan, because after all, didn't the rabbis say Mishras litin Tam Ki'ikr, that from Mishras, the word Mishras, by a Nazir, which means to soak, we learn out Tam Ki'ikr, Mikana Tadan L'chol Yisurin Shabbatorah, and from Tam Ki'ikr we can apply, and from Nazir we can then apply the concept of Tam Ki'ikr globally all across the Torah. Rabbi Akiva Nami. So let's say the same thing according to Rabbi Akiva, Mishras Heter mitztaref le'Isser. So he learns out from Mishras that if you soak bread in wine, that Heter, the bread will join together with the wine and to create the kazayas, if there isn't a kazayas of wine on its own. And and then let us apply Heter mitztaref le'Isser globally throughout the Torah. So Rav Ashi says to Rav Acha Ber Rav Avia, first of all, I think it's a beautiful kasha. Rav Ashi doesn't say that, I say that. Mishum da'ava nazir v'chata shneksuvin abo kecha ve'melamdin. So the Masoras Hashas is telling me that on Daf Chaf Aleph Mud Aleph we saw this concept of shneksuvin abo ke'echot, that when you have, if you would learn out a new concept in one place, so then you could apply it globally. Say, just like it's the halacha in this place, it's also the halacha in every place. However, if you have a particular halacha that's taught in 2 places, then it's like, wait, what's unique about these 2 places? Why is it only taught in these 2 places? And it stops there. We say, okay, well, I don't know. For some reason, the Torah is saying in these specific 2 places, this is the halacha, but then nowhere else. If we wanted to apply it globally, it would just tell us in one place and we would apply it from there. And that would obviously include the second place. How come it's teaching us in two specific places? It must be that it's only these two places and nowhere else. So that's what we're saying over here. So says Rabbi Akiva that we learn out Heter mitztaref l'Isser in two places. By Nazir, as we saw, and as we're going to see, by Korban Chatas. And because we learn out Heter mitztaref l'Isser by these two places, it's only limited to these two places. You cannot apply it globally. Nazir hada amaran, Nazir, that which we said, that when it says mishras, it's to say that the bread could be mitztaref to the wine. Chatas maihi, what's the situation of the korban chatas that Heter is mitztaref? This is the Tanya, as we learn in a brayso, kol asher yiga b'vsara yikdash, that the pasuk says anything that touches the meat of a korban chatas becomes kodesh. What does that mean? Yachal afilu lo b'la'a, is it possible even if that which doesn't touch it? Is it possible that even if that which touches the meat of the korban chatas didn't absorb from the korban chatas, it would still be kodesh? Tamalom b'vsara, achibala b'vsara, b'basar. That the pasuk says, kol sheiga b'vsara, in its meat, i.e. whatever touches the korban chatas would have to absorb some, of the liquids of the korban chatas, of the meat of the korban chatas. Yikdash, and when it says yikdash, lios kamoa, is going to be like it, shim psulahi tipasel, from ksheri te'achal k'chomer sheba, period. That if the korban chatas is pasel, so then this meat will become pasel, and if it's kosher, so then the meat will take on the stringencies of the korban pesach. What does this mean? It means, not the korban pesach, the korban chatas. So what this means is that if you have a korban chatas, okay, and you have the meat of a korban chatas, now korban chatas is kodshe kodshim. Korban chatas needs, right, there's kodshe kodshim, kodshim kalim. Kodshe kodshim need to be eaten within the azara, or within the Beis HaMikdash, and korban chatas is only edible by kohanim and liyom v'layla, one day and one night. Now let's say you have some chulin meat, some regular old meat, and it touches the korban chatas meat, right? Or as Rashi says, it could be chulin or it could be shlamim, let's say. So you have a korban shlamim. Korban shlamim is kodshim kalim. It can be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim. And shlamim can be eaten for 2 days. So if you have shlamim meat, let's say, and it touches korban chatas meat, so then we say it takes on the stringencies of the korban chatas meat. Now that means, as the Gemara says, that if the korban chatas was pasel, let's say it was pigel or something, so if the shlamim meat touches the chatas meat, and the chatas meat is pigel, so then the shlamim meat is going to be pigel and you won't be able to eat it. Or if the korban chatas meat was kosher, so then the shlamim meat is just going to take on the stringencies of the kodshim meat. I.e., whereas a korban shlamim could be eaten for 2 days, a korban chat, right, and anywhere in Jerusalem, and by anybody, well, this korban chatas needs to be eaten by kohanim inside of the Beis HaMikdash for only 1 day. So the shlamim meat is going to take on all of those stringencies, okay? And the point being that, as Rashi says, right, yeshba, right, in the Rashi Dibamaskel Kechomer Shabash, Haresh yeshba beis minin. Now in this shlamim meat, you now have 2 types of meat, echad chomer v'echad kal. One is more stringent, one is more lenient, i.e. the korban chatas is more stringent, the korban shlamim is more lenient. V'chula oleches achar chomer. And yet we're going entirely after the more stringent one, the chatas. Heter mitztaref l'Isser. So we see that the heter is being mitztaref l'Isser, right? Meaning, you have this korban shlamim that now has a little bit of korban chatas absorbed in it, right? And yet we're treating it entirely like the korban chatas, i.e. the entire shlamim, we're now going to join on to whatever little bit of korban chatas got absorbed in it, and we're going to treat it entirely like a korban chatas. So we see that heter is mitztaref l'Isser by korban chatas as well. Let's read it inside again. Third line from the top of the page on Daf Memhei Amud Aleph. The Tanya, as we learn in the brayso, kol asher yiga b'vsara yikdash, anything that touches the meat of a korban chatas will become kodesh. V'achal afilu lo b'la, is it possible that even if, so let's say we're talking about a shlamim, right? A korban shlamim touches the meat of a korban shlamim touches the meat of a korban chatas. Is it possible that even if the meat of the shlamim didn't absorb anything from the chatas, tam lomer b'vsara, achibala b'basar, it says in its flesh, so it would have to be absorbed in the flesh of the shlamim. Yikdash, it will become kodesh lios kamot, to be like the korban chatas. Shem psula itipasa. So if the korban chatas is psula, let's say it's pigel, So then also the korban shlamim is going to be possible. And if the korban chatas is kshera, so then you have to eat the korban shlamim like the stringencies of the korban chatas, right? Only kohanim in the azare, only one day. And we see heter is mitztaref l'Iser. So therefore, Rabbi Akiva says that we learn out heter mitztaref l'Iser in two places, by a nazir and by korban chatas. Therefore, it's shnei ksuvin haba in ke'echad ve'im lamdin. You can't apply it globally. So according to the rabbis, so it's kind of a weird question, but according to the rabbis, why don't we say that tam ke'ikr is shnei ksuvin haba in ke'echad? I don't understand. We don't see anywhere that the chachamim apply. Yeah, I don't know why we're assuming that the chachamim would learn out tam ke'ikr from korban chatas. I don't know. I looked it up in the article. You didn't really give much of an answer. I don't know. I think the Gemara's question just doesn't make all that much sense. But the question is, the Chachamim say, well, we learn out Tam Ke'ikr from Nazir, and therefore we apply it globally. But Chachamim, don't we also say Tam Ke'ikr by Korban Chatas, and therefore shouldn't it be Shnei Ksuvin Haba in Ke'echad? Amrei Hanu Mitzvah Tzrichei. The Chachamim say, no, we need both of those cases, and we're going to explain this. We're going to explain this in a minute. And as Rashi has pointed out in other places, sometimes the Gemara can ask a question that isn't necessarily a particularly great question, but we're also going to throw it out. And this question is going to be thrown out. And that is because the Chachamim say that you actually need both of those cases. You need whatever is written by Nazir, and you need whatever is written by Korban Chatas, and therefore there's nothing extra, right? Shnei Ksuvin Haba in Ke'echad is when I really don't need for it to be written in two places, because just tell me in one place and apply it to all places, including the second one. But if we need it to be written in both places, well then, I can explain why I need it to be written in each of the two cases, but we still could apply it globally. Now, Rabbi Akiva, my tzrichei. Now Rabbi Akiva who says that we learn out heter mitztaref l'Iser both in the context of Nazir and in the context of korban chatas. So Rabbi Akiva says, what do you mean we need both of them? We don't need both of them. We really could have only had heter mitztaref l'Iser written by one of them. Let's see. So I understand, sure. I understand that if heter mitztaref l'Iser was only written by korban chatas, we would not be able to say that by Nazir heter is mitztaref l'Iser, because we don't learn out chulin from kodshim. It's a rule. We don't learn out chulin, right? The chulin and kodshim lo gamrinon. We don't learn out chulin from kodshim. Korban chatas, of course, being kodshim. Nazir just being a regular old guy who decided he's going to be a Nazir. So therefore, I understand why if heter mitztaref l'Iser was only written by korban chatas, it wouldn't be enough. I would still need it to be written by Nazir in order to know that heter is mitztaref l'Iser by Nazir. However, but why doesn't the Torah just write heter mitztaref l'Iser in the context of Nazir? Teisi chatas would take more meaning. And then we can learn out that by korban chatas, heter is also mitztaref l'Iser. Because if we would only learn out heter mitztaref l'Iser by Nazir, we would then be able to apply it globally, including korban chatas. So therefore, says Rabbi Akiva, heter mitztaref l'Iser really only needed to be written by by Nazir, and then it could have been applied globally, including korban chatas. So why did the Torah also write heter mitztaref l'Iser by korban chatas? To say that only by Nazir and by korban chatas do we say heter mitztaref l'Iser, but by no other cases. V'Rabbanan, and the rabbis reply and say that we need these rules written both by Nazir and by korban chatas, because actually according to Chacham we learn out different things from Nazir and from korban chatas. Of course, from Nazir they learn out tam ke'ikr, as we saw, and we're going to see now that actually from korban chatas they learn out heter is mitztaref l'Iser by korban chatas, and you can apply it to kodshim, but as we said a minute ago, you can't learn out chulin from kodshim, right? So therefore the Chacham are going to learn out heter mitztaref l'Iser in the context of kodshim, in the context of korban chatas, and you can apply that to other kodshim. And therefore you need both psukim. You need the pasuk by Nazir to teach us Tam Kicker, and the pasuk by Korban Chatas to teach us Heter is mitztaref le'Iser. We need both psukim, the pasuk by Nazir and by Chatas. Chatas le'Heter mitztaref le'Iser v'chulin mikachim lo gamar. So by the Korban Chatas we learn out that Heter is mitztaref le'Iser, and yet we cannot learn out chulim from kachim. So you cannot apply Heter mitztaref le'Iser globally. It is limited to the context of kachim. And the rabbis say that from Mishras by a Nazir we learn out Tam Ki'ikr, and from there you can apply it globally to the entire Torah. Rabbi Kiva, Tavar le'Heter mitztaref le'Iser, whereas Rabbi Kiva says no, he learns out Tam Ki'ikr, as we said yesterday, from Gi'ulei Nachrim, and from Nazir and from Korban Chatas he learns out Heter mitztaref le'Iser, v'avalu shnei ksuvim haban ke'echad, v'chol shnei ksuvim haban ke'echad milamdin. And therefore, it's these, shnei ksuvim haban ke'echad. It's written in two places, and therefore we cannot apply them globally. That is what Rabbi Akiva says, which is why Rabbi Akiva holds, and why Rabbi Yochanan, who holds like Rabbi Akiva, says that Heter mitztaref le'Iser is limited to a Nazir. Amli Rav Ashi Rav Kahana. That which we learn in the Brisa, the pasuk says by a Nazir that anything that is made from grape products, whether it is pits, whether it is peels, and says the Brisa limit al isurei Nazir shemitztarefim zemzeh, to teach that the different isurim, the different prohibitions by a Nazir, they join together. So if you eat half a zayis of grape pits and half an olive of grape peels, they could join together. So now, excuse me, what? So now, here's Rav Ashi's kasha. Hasher Rav Akiva iser v'heter mitztarefin iser v'isur miboya. No, if Rav Akiva says that heter is mitztaref iser, well then certainly iser is mitztaref iser, right? If you're saying that just some regular old bread, if you have half an olive's worth of regular bread and half an olive worth of wine, they're going to join together, well then certainly half an olive of pits and half an olive of peels, which are both things that are forbidden, are going to join together. So Amalei Rav Kahana answers, Isur ve'heter b'vas achas, isur v'isur b'zechar zeh. That when we say that heter is mitztaref le'Iser, that is that you would have to eat them together in order for them to join together. But by isur and isur, it could even be one after the other. So if you have half an olive's worth of pits, and then afterwards you have half an olive's worth of peels, they could still join together to create a kazayas, and you're going to have to be a Nazir all over again. Well, that's the machlokas there between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim regarding Heter mitztaref le'Iser and Tam Ki'ikr. So basically, both Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim apply Tam Ki'ikr globally. When it comes to Heter mitztaref le'Iser, the Chachamim say that it applies to Kachim. Rabbi Akiva says that it is limited to Nazir. Okay, so now we get to this discussion about being mevatel dough. I guess you can kind of say that. Yeah, let's just say that. And it gets a little bit technical, maybe? I don't know. Let's go with that. Okay, says the Mishnah. So if you have like a kneading trough, what the heck is a kneading trough? I don't know. I guess you have some kind of like, it seems like some kind of a kli, some kind of a vessel that has a bottom to it, sides to it, and like a top lid. So, I don't know, maybe some kind of bowl or something that you knead in, that you need like dough in. So if in one place you have like a clod of dough and it's a kazayas, so then you have to burn it. But if it's less than a kazayas, so then you can leave it. It's batel b'miuto. Okay? It's batel because it's so small. And similarly when it comes to tuma. And Rashi kind of says that we're going to explain this in the Gemara, which is that in makpid olav chotetz, that if he cares about it, so then it will be a chatzitza. It'll be as we learned, things that go in the mikvah, they can't have anything separating them, so it'll be a separation if he cares about it. But if he wants it to be there, to stay existing, so then it's like a vat that I guess if you care about it, then it would be, I guess, like a kazayas in the vat, that it would be a problem. But the Rashi says the Gemara is going to explain to us what it means. Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. So now we're going to see two ways to explain our Mishnah. Right now, what did our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah said essentially that if you have a kazayas of dough, you have to burn it. If you have less than a kazayas of dough, you don't have to burn it. You can leave it. It's batel. So we're going to see two ways to understand this machlokas. The first way is more lenient. The second way is more strict. Here we go. Maybe I'll even explain it first outside. So the more lenient way is to say that when we say that you have to burn the kazayas and you can leave the less than a kazayas, so that is talking about in a place where it's not needed in order to strengthen the kneading trough. But if it's in a place of the trough that the dough is like stuck there in order to like keep the water from leaking out, well then even if it's a kazayas, you can leave it there because it's there to strengthen the trough. Fine. That's the more lenient way to do it, right? To basically say that when you have to burn the kazayas, it's only when it's not necessary to strengthen the trough. But if it's necessary to strengthen the trough, so then you can leave it. And we see that when in a place where it's not to strengthen the trough, you can also leave, if it's less than a kazayas, you can leave it as well. So the only thing you have to burn really is when it's not there to strengthen the trough, and it is a kazayas. Now, the more stringent way to understand this machlokas is to say that it's even when the dough is there to strengthen the trough. So even when it's there to strengthen the trough, if it's larger than a kazayas, you still need to burn it, even though it's there to strengthen the trough. And if it's less than a kazayas, then we could say it's batel and you can leave it. But if it's not there to strengthen the trough, so then even if it's less than a kazayas, you're still going to have to burn it. That's the more stringent way to learn it. So here we go. So when we say that you burn the kazayas and you leave the less than a kazayas, that's only in a place where it's not there to strengthen the trough structurally. But if it's there to strengthen the trough, well then then you don't need to burn the dough if it's larger than a kazayas. Michlal, this implies the pachos mikazayas, that when you have some dough that's less than an olive's worth, even in a place where it's not strengthening the trough, you can leave it. Okay? Those who, however, teach it on the second part, which means that when we say that if it's less than a kazayas, you can leave it. So Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, says Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, this is the second version, that this machlokas, that when we say that if it's less than a kazayas, you can leave it, that's only in a place where it's there to provide structural support. But if it's not needed to strengthen the vat, chayev levar, you would have to burn this dough, even if it's less than a kazayas. Michlal the kazayas, which means therefore that when you have a kazayas of dough, and even though it's in a place where it's there to strengthen, you would still need to burn it. So according to the first way to understand it, when we said that you have to burn it if it's larger than a kazayas, that's when it's not there to give structural support. But if it's there to strengthen the vat, even a kazayas, you can leave. Whereas the second way to learn it is that no, when we say that you burn the dough if it's a kazayas, that's even when it's there to strengthen the vat. And then when it's not strengthening the vat, then you would have to even burn less than a kazayas. Okay. Tanya Kilishna Kama, Tanya Kilishna Basa. We have a brisa supporting both versions. Tanya Kilishna Kama. We have a brisa supporting the first version. Botik shebesidke areva. If you have dough that is on in the cracks in a vat, b'makom also lechazek, in a place that is there to strengthen the vat, eno chodzetz, the trough. So eno chodzetz, it would not, if it was tamei, it would not be considered a chatzitza in the mikvah, a separation. Ve'eno over, and on Pesach you wouldn't be over on bayora bayimatzei. Uv'makom she'eno asur lechazek, and if it's in a place that is not there to strengthen the trough, well then chodzetz, it would be a chatzitza in the mikvah, but over, and it would be a problem by Rabbi Matzeh on Pesach. And what are we talking about? B'chazayis, that's talking about the kazayis, that if it's there to strengthen, you can leave it, and if it's not there to strengthen, you have to get rid of it. But if the dough is less than an olive's worth, well then, even if it is in a place where it's not there to support the trough, you still do not need to get rid of it. And we have a brisa supporting the more stringent version, which is if you have dough in the cracks of a kneading trough, if it's in a place where it's providing strength, nonetheless, if it's providing strength, okay, fine. So eno chotzetz ve'eno over. So then it doesn't create a chatzitza in the mikveh if it's tameh, and also it's not going to be a problem on Pesach in terms of bayro bayimatzeh. B'makom she'ena asur l'chazek, but if it's in a place where it doesn't provide strength, support, so chotzetz, so then it would be a chatzitza in the mikveh of over, and it would be a problem on Pesach. And that's specifically if it's less than a kazayis. So when we say if it's l'chazek, you can leave it, and if it's not in the chazek, you have to get rid of it. But if it was a kazayis, well then afilu b'makom asur l'chazek chotzetz over. Then even if it was in a place where it provides strength to the trough, it would still be a chatzitza in the mikveh and a problem on Pesach. Kasha na'adadeh. So one second. So we had the first brisa supports the first way of understanding the Mishnah, the more lenient way. The second brisa supports the more stringent way of learning the Mishnah. Now, kasha na'adadeh. They seem to be these brisas seem to be arguing on each other, right? In one case, in one brisa, we're saying that, let's say if you have a dough that's greater than a kazayas, you can leave it if it's there l'chazek, and the other brisa says you have to burn it. The first brisa says that if you have dough that's less than a kazayas, even if it's in a place where it's not giving strength, you can leave it. Where the second brisa says that if it's in a place where it's not giving strength, you have to burn it. So like, what's going on? How do we make sense of these two brises? So Rav Huna's solution is simply to swap out, get rid of the more lenient one and go with the more stringent one. Alright, that sounds fun, Rav Huna. Rav Yosef Amar, what do you think Rav Yosef says? Classic Rav Yosef. Tanoi shakat me'alma. What? Did you just throw away the Tanoim? It's as if they don't even exist, the Machlokas Tanoim. Of course, Rav Yosef, with his encyclopedic memory, assumes that everybody knows every opinion of every Tana that ever lived, just like he does. And he says to Rav Huna, what? You're just ignoring the fact that it's a Machlokas Tanoim. Tanoi, it's a Machlokas Tanoim. Where? The Tanya, of course, as we know from the Brisa. Hapasha Ipsha. If you have bread and it got moldy, okie dokie, maybe put that in some kuta chabavli. Chayv leva'er, you have to burn it. Because apparently you could break it up and crumble it up, and then it could make other doughs into hametz. So even moldy bread you got to get rid of. Fine. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer, and says Reb Shimon ben Elazar, when do we say that you have to get rid of it? If it's still, you haven't done anything to indicate that you're using it for any other purpose. It's still, the assumption is that it's for eating. So you have to get rid of it. But if you have a block of leavening, I don't exactly know what these leavening items, block things would be, but if you set it aside to sit on it, so then it would be betela, and you would not need to get rid of it. So what do we see? So we see that according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar, if you simply set something aside for another purpose, well then you can leave it. And therefore he would be the author of the first brisa, which says that if you have a kazayas of dough that's there to strengthen the trough, you can leave it there because you're not planning to eat it. It's there to strengthen a trough, so you can leave it. Now, Mida Amar Reb Shimon ben Elazar betela, and now from the fact that Reb Shimon ben Elazar says that as long as you made it clear that you have other intentions for this dough, it's batel. So Mechad Tanakama Sarvelo betela. Well, that implies that the Tanakama who argues on Reb Shimon ben Elazar holds that even though you have other intentions for it, it's not a batel. And therefore, Tanakama would be the author of the second brisa, which says that when it comes to dough that is greater than a kazayas, even if it's there to strengthen the kneading trough, nonetheless, you'd have to burn it. So So we see that according to the Tanakama, even though you were mevatel the kazayas, it is not batel. Even though you put it to strengthen the trough, it doesn't matter, it's not batel, and that would be, Tanakama would be the author of the second brisa. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye says to his Rebbe Rav Yosef, Teratz the b'chazayas. Okay, so you just answered the machlokas about a kazayas. That in the first brisa, we say that a kazayas you can leave if it's there l'chazek because it's batel, not like Reb Shimon ben Elazar. And in the second brisa we say even if the kazayas is there to strengthen the vat, the trough, you still have to get rid of it because it's not batel, and that's like the Tanakama. So we explained that machlokas, but that wasn't the only machlokas between the two brises. What about the fact that in the first brisa we say that if it's not strengthening the trough, you can leave less than a kazayas. Whereas the second brisa says if it's not strengthening the trough, you have to get rid of the less than a kazayas. How do you answer that? Did you answer that question? So Ella, Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So Abaye actually answers, and this is really where we're going to conclude over here, that both brises are Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Okay, but then isn't he conflicting with himself? No. You just have to know how to read between the lines. V'lokash, it's no problem. So it depends if it's in a place where you're actually going to be interacting with the dough or not. So now, what this means is that the first brisa is operating. So there's no machlokas b'chlal between the first brisa and the second brisa. They're just talking about different situations. The first brisa is entirely operating in a situation where there's kneading going on, and there's going to be water, and there's going to be dough, and we need to plug up this vat so that nothing comes out, this trough. Now, the second brisa, which is more stringent, is actually talking about in a place where there's no dough and no water getting there, and therefore it's more stringent. So, the first brisa, which says that if it's in a place where it's lechazek, so then even if it's larger than a kazayas, or a kazayas or larger, you can leave it. That's talking about mamish on the bottom of the trough, where you really need support so that no water leaks out from the bottom of the trough. So in that case, and remember, this is all Reb Shimon ben Elazar. It's all the same opinion. It's one unified opinion, and it all makes sense. So Reb Shimon ben Elazar is saying in the first brisa that when the dough is there on the bottom of the trough, well, then it's really to give significant support, and even if it's a kazayas, you can leave it. If it's on the walls of the trough, where it's still makom lisha, but it's not quite as important as on the bottom, well, then if it's a kazayas, you have to burn it. If it's less than a kazayas, you can leave it. Fine. The second brisa, which is more stringent, so that already is now taking into account places where there's no kneading going on at all. And when he says that even in a place where it's lechazek, you have to burn the dough if it's a kazayas. Lechazek over there doesn't mean the bottom of the vat of the trough, like in the first brisa. It means the sides of the trough, where the walls of the trough, where there's still some kneading going on, but not as, it's not as important as the bottom. So in that case, just like in the first brisa, he says that on the walls, if it is a kazayas, you have to burn it. If it's less than a kazayas, you can leave it. And when he says right, where it's not providing any strength to the vat, to the trough, that means none at all. It's on the lips, at the top, at the lip of the trough, where there's no kneading going on or anything like that. So there, even if it's less than a kazayas, you have to get rid of it because it's really serving no purpose. So it's all Reb Shimon ben Elazar, and really it just depends if we're talking about the top, by the lip of the trough, in which case you have to get rid of all dough, kazayas, less than a kazayas. If it's the walls of the trough, so if it's a kazayas, you get rid of it. If it's less than a kazayas, you can leave it. If it's the bottom of the trough, well then even if it's a kazayas, you can keep it. Amar Vashi says, Vashi lo temish lo b'makom lisha agaba da'agana ela asifsa da'agana. Okay, Rav Ashi comes to clarify, which seems to us to be obvious as well as to the Gemara to be obvious, which is that when we're saying that shalob makom lisha, it's not, if it's in a place where there's no kneading going on, even if it's less than a kazayis, you have to get rid of it. It's not talking about the outside, the back of the trough. It's talking about the lips of the trough. So pshita, that's obvious. He says, no, I may have thought that zimnin de atif umati lasum kamash malan. I may have thought to say that sometimes maybe when you're kneading, some water or something can drip onto the lips, and therefore maybe that would be considered makom lisha, and then maybe if it's less than a kazayis, you would think that you can leave it. So kamash malan, Rav Ashi is saying that no, the lips are considered shalov makom lisha, and if who could tell me? And therefore, if there is some dough on the lips of this trough, so then even if it's less than a kazayis, you have to get rid of it. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav, halacha k'Reb ben Elazar. Says Rav Nachman, in the name of his teacher Rav, that the halacha, it's Reb ben Elazar. What does Reb ben Elazar say? He says that if you're mevatel hametz, then it's batel. If we said that you have like a block of leaven, and you're going to say that you're going to use it as a chair, as a seat, so then it's a seat. You don't have to get rid of it. Ini, is this true? V'amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ashi Amar Rav. Instead of Yitzchak bar Ashi, there is a street in Achlaot, I think, called Yitzchak bar Ashi Street. Now over there, it's one word, bar Ashi, but I wonder if it's connected to bar Ashi, Yitzchak bar Ashi. What do you guys think? V'amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ashi Amar Rav. Rav Yitzchak bar Ashi said in the name of Rav, Im toch panea betit betela. So says Rav Yitzchak bar Ashi in the name of Rav that if you took this like leaven stuff that you want to make into a seat and you apply plaster to it, well then it's no longer, you don't have to worry about hametz anymore. So tachin lo tachlo, implying that it's not enough to just say I'm going to use this seor as a seat. No, that wouldn't be enough. You actually have to do something. You have to apply plaster to it. So the Gemara answers, man demasniha lo masniha. You say, look, what do you want me to tell you? It's not like we have machlokas. You have Rav Nachman says one thing, Rav Yitzchak bar Ashi says another thing. Both of them are saying the name of Rav. It's not like it's the same person saying two conflicting things. We have one. I mean, it is kind of the same person saying two conflicting things because they're both saying the name of Rav. But we're saying, look, Rav Nachman for whatever reason said this thing. Rav Yitzchak bar Ashi said another thing. I guess choose one. But then there's another way to say, which is Ikadam. Those who say Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav, that Rav Nachman is saying in the name of Rav, just like Rav Yitzchak bar Ashi, that Ein halacha k'Reb ben Elazar, that the halacha is not like Reb ben Elazar, the Amar who says that you can just say that you're being mevatel, that you're going to use this seor as a chair and that's enough. No, the halacha is not like Reb ben Elazar. The Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ashi, Amar Rav, im toch panea betit betela v'chulei, because Rav Yitzchak bar Ashi says the name of Rav that only if you apply plaster to it does it now become batel, but until then it wouldn't be batel. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Shnei chatzoi zeisim. If you have two half an olive's worth of chametz, v'chut shel batzik beinein, and there's like a string of dough between them, roin kol shilu yinotol achut v'nitalin imo. So we say, well, it depends. If you could pick up the half an olive's worth of chametz by a string, and the 2 half olives will be able to stay on the string and be picked up with it, well then chayiv levar, you have to get rid of them. V'im lav, but if you'll pick up the string and it'll just kind of fall apart and they're two distinct half olives worths, well then enu chayiv levar, they don't join together and you do not need to burn them. Amar Ula says Ula la amaron ela ba'areva, says Ula, that is really only talking about in a kneading trough. Aval b'vayis, but if it is in a house, chayiv levar, you would have to get rid of these 2 half zayises of chametz, even if they are separate. My time, how come the zimnin dechanish lu v'nafli gabe adade? Because sometimes you can be like sweeping the house or whatever, and the 2 half zayises can now join together to make one full zayis, and then that would be a problem. Amar Ula says Ula ba'u b'ma'arava. They asked the following questions in Israel. These are going to be teku questions. Ba'is v'aliyamau. What if you have a half an olive's worth of chametz in your house and another half an olive of chametz in your attic? Do we have to be concerned that they might fall into the same place of the house and you'll become a kazayas of chametz? What do you guys think? What I think is that nowadays even pashit crumbs everyone goes insane about. So mistama they wouldn't have a potential for a kazayas of chametz. That would be nightmare city. What if you have like a house and like a portico outside of the house and there's a half a zayis in each? What if you have one house and inside that house is another house, and there's a half a zayis in the outer one and a half a zayis in the inner one? So you have to be concerned that they'll come together. Take it, we don't know the answer. Tana Rabbanan. The rabbis taught, Apasha Ibsha, if you have moldy bread, V'nifsla milechol adam, and people will no longer eat this moldy bread. Ve'akelev yachol ochla, but a dog would still eat it. So if it is an egg size, so then it will still be metame tumas ochlin, since the dog could still eat it. But since humans don't eat it anymore, so if it's Erev Pesach and it's truma, we can burn it together with truma tmeya, and we're not going to be concerned that you're going to be metame truma tahora with the tmeya, because since it's not edible for humans anymore, you don't have to worry about that. Mishum Reb Nosson Amru, they said the name Reb Nosson Eina Matama. That says Reb Nosson that once it's not edible for humans, it's not even metame tumas ochlin anymore. Kiman Azla Adatanan, like who is the following Mishnah? Klal Amru B'Tairis, they said a rule by Teharot, Klam Yuchad Ochel Adam, Tamei Achi Posum Lechol Lekelev, that anything that is set aside for human consumption will transfer tumas ochlin until it is no longer fit for dog consumption. So command look Reb Nosson. Well, that's clearly not like Reb Nosson, because Reb Nosson says that this bread that became moldy and is no longer fit for human consumption, but is still fit for dog consumption, so then it will it will no longer be metame tumas ochlin. Yet we have this other Mishnah that says that it remains being metame tumas ochlin until dogs will not be able to eat it. So that's clearly not like Reb Nosson. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught arevas avdanin. If you have a vat that is used by the tanners, that you put in it flour, I guess, as part of the tanning process, it involved flour, I guess. If you put flour into this tanner's trough within 3 days of Pesach, well, then you have to get rid of it, because we have to be concerned about hametz. But if you put the flour into the trough more than 3 days before Pesach, I don't know if I said 30, I hope not, more than 3, we're talking about more or less than 3 days before Pesach, eno chayav levayer. If you put this flour in there before, more than 3 days before Pesach, you don't need to burn it, because the trough somehow already kind of messed it up, and it's not going to be geshmak hametz. Reb Nosson, says Reb Nosson, when do we say this? Shelo Nosson l'socha oris. When we say that within 3 days of Pesach, if you put the flour in, you have to get rid of it, that's only if you didn't put in any hides. But if you put hides in, then even within 3 days, you don't need to get rid of the this like flour dough stuff, because the hides certainly will make the flour not very enjoyable for eating. Rava that the halacha is like Reb Nosson, and not only within 3 days, but even if it was within an hour of Pesach, or within within the same day or the same hour of Pesach, still you'd be able, if you put hides in it, you're not going to be concerned about eating it. Well, that was Daf Memhei of Masechta Pesachim. What do we do today? So, okay, at the beginning of the Daf, we wrapped up the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and the Chacham regarding tam ki'ikr and heter mitztaref le'isr, and what we concluded was that according to Rabbi Akiva, he says that tam ki'ikr, which he learns out from Gi'ulei Nachrim, as we learned yesterday, is applied globally. Heter mitztaref le'isr is only limited to a nazir, because it's shnei ksuvin haba and ke'echad. According to the Chacham, tam ki'ikr is also global, and they learn that out from nazir. And heter mitztaref le'isr is applied to kodshim, but not globally, because you can't learn out chulin from kodshim, but within kodshim we would say heter mitztaref le'isr. Then we discussed this sugya of dough in a kneading trough. So there are two ways, it really gets into the concept of being mevatel dough, right? If you have dough and you set it aside for some other purpose, is that enough to say that it's no longer for eating and you can leave it? It's batel. So according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar, he says, yeah, you can do that. According to the Tanna Kama over there, he says, no, it wouldn't be enough. And we saw that that Rav says that you would have to, actually do something in order to be mevatel it. You'd actually have to put on plaster in order to show that you're no longer planning to use this dough. Now, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said it would be enough just to, be mevatel, right? To just, let's say, if you take some dough and you put it in your vat, so you don't have to do anything more than that. It's clearly an indication that it's batel in there, but it depends where in the vat you put it. So he says if you put it on the bottom of the vat, so then even if it's a kazayas or larger, you can leave it because it's in a very important structural part of the vat. If it's on the walls of the vat, which is still providing structural support but not quite as much, so then if it's a kazayas, you'd have to burn it. If it's less than a kazayas, you can leave it. If it's on the lips, the top of the vat of this trough, so then even if it's less than kazayas, you have to get rid of it because it's not really providing any strengthening. Those were really the main sugyas of today. Hope you enjoyed it. Peace out.